The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, CHD. It's Monday, July the 13th, 2026. We're live here at CHD TV. In just a second, we're going to be talking about MAiD in Canada. It's a really, really important subject, and we're going to be doing a lot more on this at CHD TV. But we will be lifting the program up because we're going to go to Johnathan afterwards. He is totally unvaccinated. I spotted him on Instagram. He's fantastic. You're going to love him and his mum, Rosebud. So we're going to be chatting with them. And then we're going to go to a tribute New Zealand Casey. So now let's get kicked off with bringing on Dr. Chris Shaw, which I know many of you know, and Professor York Hsiang. I don't know if I said that right, but good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
But this is a very important subject, and I find, as a mother of an adult with autism, I find it extremely distressing because I know where this is going to go. So can we start off with both of you introducing yourselves and reminding them who you are, Dr. Shaw, and introduce.
Certainly. My name is Christopher Shaw. I am a neuroscientist, full professor at the University of British Columbia, and I have the privilege of serving as the co-chair of the Scientific and Medical Advisory Committee of the Canadian Citizens Care Alliance, which is an organization that has devoted a lot of the last 5 years to deciphering a lot of the stuff that comes from government about the COVID pandemic, understanding the disease itself, and understanding some of the treatment options, and looking at the ways the government perpetually tries to gaslight us. And we have now become involved in a MAiD endeavor where York, who will introduce himself in a second, is basically chairing the development of a book on MAiD in Canada.
Yeah, do you introduce yourself?
Morning. My name is York Hsiang. I was a vascular surgeon at the Vancouver General Hospital. Now I'm a emeritus professor of surgery, also at University of British Columbia, and a member of the Scientific and Medical Advisory Committee of the Canadian Citizens Care Alliance. I am now a amateur part-time writer. I write a weekly blog under my pen name of Analytical Scalpel. And my interest in MAiD was piqued by an article I wrote because a friend of mine who was dying from turbo cancer, likely due to vaccines since she was previously healthy, asked me, since I was her medical advisor, whether she should have MAiD if the time came. And so I then did a deep dive into the drugs used in MAiD. And it is a shocking finding that the drugs used in MAiD are, number one, the same drugs used in executing of prisoners, or the same class of drugs. Number two, these drugs are given in very large dosages. There is a risk that the MAiD drugs in combination given by physicians who largely are not aware of these drugs is not giving patients what they think is MAiD. In other words, a painless, dignified death. And so that was really my concern about it. MAiD has been available in Canada since 2016, originally for a very small group of patients who had intractable pain with irreversible disease. And from that, it has exploded into becoming the 5th leading cause of death in Canada. This year, we will reach a milestone of 100,000 deaths in Canada as a result of MAiD. MAiD, in fact, may be a way that the government is trying to recoup healthcare costs because healthcare in Canada is a disaster, primarily as it is government run, and any incentive to change how healthcare is run in Canada, it has largely been unsuccessful. There was a recent article published last year talking about the economics of the MAiD program in Canada, and with a little bit of tongue-in-cheek, describing those who receive MAiD voluntarily as well as non-voluntarily, as Canada could save over $1 trillion by the year 2047. Now, that's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek. What's happening in Canada is that MAiD is currently available in two programs. It's available as an assisted suicide program. In other words, the patients are given an oral cocktail of medications to take, which is rather infrequent, or there is active physician participation, otherwise known as euthanasia. And this is the most common form of MAiD in Canada. Did you know that MAiD is actually far more common than putting down your own animal? And so if you look at dogs that are put down from dog shelters, there are roughly half the number of patients who are dying in Canada from MAiD. And this is from the province of Ontario. So this is really quite a terrifying statistic. MAiD in Canada is at a crossroads. On one hand, there has been discussion to expand the indications of MAiD to include those with mental illness. Most recently, there was a committee struck that basically suggested there should be a pause, if not permanent pause, on expanding MAiD for mentally ill. However, there's also a second piece of legislation that is winding through the Canadian Parliament at the time to discuss MAiD for children and teenagers, essentially the mature minor program, which means that if there are young people less than the age of 18, they can choose MAiD without parental consent. And right now there are advocates saying that this is not a bad thing for children. It is a very horrific thing to consider. Whether this will also be pushed back like the mental illness issue is unknown at present. Canada is a large, also divided country in that there are some provinces, in particular the province of Quebec, which is very pro-MAiD. And want to expand the program very aggressively, compared to other provinces which are more conservative, such as Alberta, which wants to put more limits or guardrails on MAiD. And so overall, my concerns of MAiD is the legislation that the government is considering to expand MAiD. My other concerns are that once expanded, since MAiD has to be administered either by a physician or a trained nurse, whether these people actually have adequate training to perform MAiD. And in one published article from the Canadian Medical Association Journal in 2022, in fact, only 21% of the physicians who are actively giving MAiD can be said to fully understand the drugs that they're giving for MAiD. And because the drugs given for MAiD are essentially anesthetic drugs, but in very, very large dosages. And as a result of this, there are physician zealots who, whether they're in hospital, they need to get a quota of MAiD cases almost on a weekly basis. There are also physician zealots who contact family practitioner offices. And this I have heard from discussing this with family doctors, that they want to know on each family doctor's list how many patients are eligible for MAiD. There is a financial incentive for these doctors since they are reimbursed quite well for a very short procedure. As a result of the fact that the majority of physicians who are performing MAiD likely are not aware of how these drugs actually work. How they assess MAiD is only by clinical death. There's no other monitoring of MAiD. And as a result of that, in the same Canadian Medical Association Journal in 2022, involving were reviewing over 3,500 cases of MAiD in the provinces of Ontario and British Columbia. The average time to die by MAiD was 9 minutes. However, the range was from 1 minute to 2 hours. In fact, about a quarter of patients took over an hour to die. And this is clinically. This meaning you no longer have a heartbeat. Your brain could still be functioning, but you no longer have a heartbeat, and so you are then deemed to be dead. The shocking thing is that when you actually look at the drugs that they're being used, many of the drugs, in particular the kill shot, the cardiotoxic drugs, in 1/4 of those patients was not given. Why was that? Was that the reason why patients were taking over 1 hour to die? At the same time, when MAiD is described to be a painless procedure, less than 1% of the patients actually received a true medication for pain, in other words, a narcotic. Very, very surprising. And so I have concerns that as the program gets expanded even more, there's going to be more practitioners who want to get onto this because it is lucrative. And the majority of them don't have any training. Nobody has training in how to kill a patient. Our whole training is how to save a patient and keep them alive. Giving medications that they really are not familiar with and having these type of results. There was a very unusual case 2 months ago that happened in Ontario, where a physician recognized a patient who he thought would be suitable for MAiD, convinced the patient that they should have MAiD, and then drove the patient to the place where they were going to have MAiD and performed it. This same physician also performed MAiD on another patient who subsequently woke up because they only received the first 2 drugs, that's the sedative and the anesthetic drug, while the doctor had already left the scene. And then after the patient woke up, the doctor had to be called back. And so the doctor was naturally reported. And for that, he really only got a slap on the wrist. You know, he had, I think, a penalty of 6 months for retraining. And so this is completely out of control in Canada. And so I hope that the US does not follow the path that Canada has chosen. MAiD is now the 5th leading cause of death in Canada. It is likely an economic bonus to the government overall. It also benefits physicians who are performing MAiD, and for programs that are active in organ transplantation, MAiD patients currently are being used as organ donors. Often,
and the younger they can get them, the younger than they can get them, the better the organs. And that's
that is correct. Yeah, that's correct.
Absolutely concerned.
This is so dark. It is so dark. It reminds me of the hospital protocol killings because they just killed them like that. But what is even more dark outside of them coming after mental health, which is what autism 1 in 21, is that, can we show up, Lou, bring up that colouring book for children on how to die with dignity? I mean, that should disturb every human being. This is a colouring book for children. Someone talk about this, please. It's very disturbing.
What is disturbing? And so currently, this is the legislation that is in front of Parliament for discussion about expanding the indications of MAiD to include children and adults. And so you can imagine that any child with a chronic illness, depression, they may succumb to this, and there is no parental consent needed for it.
That's right. I should also mention, Polly, I mentioned before that we started that they were offering it to Canadian soldiers who came back from Afghanistan with PTSD, and say, have you considered MAiD? Maybe you should, and we can help you. And so there's a lot of nudging going on to push people to accept this procedure.
Right, but again, talk about what you told me. Like, thank you for serving for us. Now we're going to kill you.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, you risk your life. We appreciate that, and now it's time for you to die. We'll help you out. Yeah.
everybody should be extremely disturbed. This should be on the forefront of everyone's mind. Now, how can we get involved? What can we do? I mean, you've got a book coming out, right, Dr. York?
We're currently working on a book. The book is, we're aiming to have the book out sometime next year.
And you already have a book out there.
I already have a book out, but that is not a book about MAiD.
No, but we're going to just talk about it anyway.
Yeah, but it's going to be an extremely important book, and York is is the main driver of this, and we hope to have it out, and we hope to come back on your show and be able to talk about it in detail in the near future.
And he has Substack as well, or somewhere where you're writing. Let's just get that up. I want people to be able to follow you and what you're doing. There you go. Well, it's not Substack. Well, yes, it is. Hsiang.substack.com. Everybody, we need to be following him. He's leading the way in trying to stop this, is what I'm saying. And we're so grateful for that. And Audible Bleeding, that is your book you have out now. And you have it next year.
Yes. Yeah, so Audible Bleeding is a historical book of my specialty, how it developed in Vancouver. And so it follows a 45-year period from the mid-70s to 2020, but it also talks about all the things that happened in Canadian healthcare that impacted it. And so for those interested in what the Canadian healthcare system is like and the reasons why, it is included in that book.
Well, I want to thank you both for being on this morning. It's only 15 minutes. There's so many more questions to ask you, but thank you for alerting us this. And please do come back on again and keep us updated, because this is going nowhere good fast.
Thank you, Polly.
Thanks very
Much
much.
appreciated.
Thank you both. Okay, everybody, let's go over to Johnathan and Rosebud. This is going to be more uplifting for you. Good morning, both of you.
Good morning. Thanks for having us.
Well, before we have a chat, we're going to run this, how I spotted you on Instagram.
My mom never brought me to the doctor growing up. I'm 20 years old. I've never had a vaccine. I've never had an antibiotic. Mom, can you share with us 3 tools from your toolbox on how you raise 4 healthy children away from the standard American lifestyle and how you raise them healthy?
Sure, I'd love to. Number 1, I always kept my children on an alkaline diet. Number 2, I believed in detox. So if they had the sniffles or any type of cold, I wouldn't run to a doctor or think of taking a Tylenol for a slight fever. We would detox. That means benzoate and psyllium, green drinks, alkaline food, and a lot of rest. Everything hot, no cold drinks, warm water with lemon. I believed in saunas, infrared saunas only.
And how old are infrared sauna?
Over 30 years old. I believed in oil of oregano. I would put 3 drops of essential oil on their feet every night, but in 24 hours, if they were having sniffles or anything at all, they were up and running.
When we were sick, what were the symptoms that we did have? Like, did we ever have an ear infection or anything like that? Like, how bad were the symptoms?
No infections, no throat infection, never a strep throat or anything like that. No vomiting, no diarrhea, none of those symptoms that children get. Vomiting is a big thing for children. My children never vomited. It's not that I don't believe in doctors, I do, but I don't want them to be responsible for my children's health. So I didn't go to them for that. I didn't need to. If I needed to, something tragic happened, I would use them. They did go to a checkup once a year for the school.
Was there anything
process.
ever wrong?
Never had anything. Even the doctor would say to me, you're lucky I haven't seen you in a year. Where have you gone? And I said, nowhere. You're my doctor. You're my only doctor the kids had.
What did our pediatrician say about us not getting vaccinated?
He knew because we never came to him for any problems. Yet at one point when he had to discharge us from his pediatrician office, he said to me, it broke his heart because he knew how healthy we are and he knew how unfair it was. But I asked him once, I said, am I really doing a disjustice to my children? And he said, absolutely not. Just keep on doing what you're doing. Your kids are healthy. They don't need anything more, he says. That's it.
Good pediatrician right there.
Yeah, he was great.
If you have
That's brilliant. That really lit me up when I was scrolling through on things, because everything is so dark at the moment. So to see you, Johnathan, thank you for coming on CHD TV. First of all, how old are you?
Yeah, I'm 20 years old, about to turn 21. In college, I'm going into my junior year of college right now.
And, well, I've got to go over to your mum, Rosebud. Love that name.
Thank you.
Yeah, tell us why you didn't. What happened? You got 4 children and you did vaccinate your first one. So talk us through the story there.
My first one is 41 years old. I think she just turned 41. So years ago, there was very few vaccines. But I was a very young mom. I did nurse her. I did go 100% natural childbirth. So I was always on the natural path, but I didn't know anything much about the vaccines or research it. And then her dad passed away, had a bad accident when she was 3. And I was 5 years before I married my second husband, who was a chiropractor, Jonathan's father, and my other daughter, Nicole and Nicole Joseph and Jonathan. My first one's Natalie. And I just knew that I was going to research. He had epilepsy. And so I found someone that helped him with the epilepsy when I met him. And then I really researched more with this gentleman called John Galamaga. He was a wonderful man. And he taught me and educated me on vaccines. So when I had my children natural, I would never do an epidural. I would never do induced or anything like that. I shared the risk of vaccinating my child. I thought was of the side effects you get from it was more a risk of that than a risk of them ever getting whatever diseases they say you're preventing. And they never got the chicken pox. They went to school. They went to a regular school, Pinecrest Academy in Boca Raton, private school, all four of my children. And they had religious exemptions, and we never had a problem. And I remember one day the school called me saying, keep your child, Joe and Nicole home. Jono wasn't born yet. And they said, there's a chicken pox going around. And I said, no, they can go to school. We'll take our risk. And they never caught it. And all the other kids were spread and they were all vaccinated. So I felt like I had living proof. Now, I'm not a doctor. Obviously, I don't put any claims. It was what worked for me in my life with my children. They were all super healthy. And I did a full spectrum, like their diet. I never had a Tylenol. They also on vegetarian diets. Jonathan's never had. He's been a vegan since birth. And I'm not saying that's part of it, but it helps on a clean diet. Plant-based diet, we all know now is very popular. And so I don't know if when I went to a doctor I shared that on the clip, my pediatrician was a wonderful man. I loved him. I respect doctors. I respect them if we need them for an accident or anything, they could save our lives. I just didn't want them injecting anything with, I feel, as heavy metals, mercury. To me, I called it poison. I'm sorry to share that, but that was to me. So I don't sugarcoat anything, but I don't put anyone down that go that path at all. I shared it. I kept it to myself. Jonathan has now studied this in a science level and ran with this and shared it. And I hope it can help some parents that are on the fence or that aren't sure and don't want to take the risk of the side effects that it can cause.
Yeah, Jonathan, it was great to see you on Instagram out there talking about it. So what made you decide I'm just going to go public with this?
Yeah. So, I mean, when I was in high school, I remember my anatomy class, I fell in love with science, taking biology classes and all of that. So going into college, I knew I wanted to study more about biology and all that. And around like 4 years ago is when I started diving deeper into the science behind pretty much everything of like how I was raised as a child. So all sort of the modalities that we did growing up. Because before I was just listening to what my mom said, but it worked out. But I wanted to have a better understanding of like why we were doing the things we did, and the same thing with like the vaccines. I wanted to know if I have, it's a very strong belief, of me not wanting to ever get vaccinated. I would never get vaccinated ever again. Having that belief, I wanted to sort of know why, and so I started actually like looking into the literature, the primary literature. And about all stuff, not just vaccines. And then I started sort of just sharing pretty much everything what I was learning on social media and on Instagram. And I think it's a great way to sort of inform the public because even just, with scientific papers, right? They get published and after that, okay, maybe they, if they're really, really good, maybe they'll get into a textbook and maybe they'll get some publicity. But for the most part, they just stay in the journal that they get published in, and the public is not aware of it. And there's some amazing research on many different, topics on how to sort of live a healthier life that we can implement into our lives. And so I wanted to share that with the general public so we can get information just out there. I think that's the best thing. If we withhold information from the public, that's really where, I think things can go bad because then we're just going to be listening to whatever the authorities tell us. And we should question what everyone tells us, right? Question what the doctor tells us and all that, and look into this stuff for yourself. Question what my mom and I are telling you as well.
Exactly.
And so I would say that, yeah, I started falling in love with sort of the science communication. And I started sharing. Around 3 years ago, I started really getting into the science of light and how light affects our health on many different levels, both natural, sunlight and daylight, and also artificial light indoors. I started sharing that online because I think that's a topic that hasn't been really explained or hasn't been really shared a ton. So I started sharing that, and then made my video with my mom, and I've shared about vaccines here and there. I try to stay away from it publicly on social media a whole ton, because especially with short clips, I think there's a ton of nuance to it. So it's easy for people to just hear a couple seconds on an Instagram clip and then have their own opinions. But yeah, I fell in love with sharing it, and I think that's a really important avenue to go by. And having the video that my mom and I posted, I think it's great, and I think I want to share more about my childhood growing up, because I've seen the profound impact that lifestyle, diet, and just other lifestyle things, the detoxification protocols has on our health. And I've seen the difference from me and my siblings, and compared to our peers, and it's very drastic from what I've seen. I know my mom could attest to that as well. And I think it comes down to the idea that the body has the innate capacity to heal, and we just need to give it the environment for healing. If we give it an environment where the standard American environment and diet and just lifestyle and things that the standard American is living in, that's not an adequate environment for the body to heal properly. So the body is super intelligent and can heal naturally if we allow it to. And I think that's one of the sort of premises that my mom has held to growing, raising her 4 children as well. So that's a little bit about how I've started sharing on Instagram.
And what about being attacked? Because we all know, I mean, we get attacked. Our children are injured by vaccines, and we get attacked being called anti-vaxxers, even though we vaccinated our kids. So how are you dealing with attacks? And can you talk a little bit about fear? Because I think it's fear that makes the young mum go and get the measles vaccine, MMR, because they are scared their child's going to die, and why you don't seem to have any fear anyway.
Yeah, I can touch on this quickly, and then I'm sure my mom can share a little bit more about her personal experience with it. But for me, I mean, it's like going back to that video my mom and I posted. Obviously, it got a lot of views, a lot of comments. If anything that gets a lot of views on social media, you're going to have negative comments on the videos. And I even told my mom when the video first came out, like, we're not going to read the negative comments. And yeah, my mom never read them. I read a couple, and then I read them, and it goes in one ear out the other. I mean, people are going to say what they want. Obviously, like my mom always says, it's like our personal lived experience. I think the lived experience is the best evidence you have for your life. I can go read 1,000 scientific papers, but if it doesn't align with my lived experience, it's going to be hard for me to believe it. So I think that's really important. And you can't listen to the haters and all that. And I think also I'll say just one other quick thing. Growing up in terms of how I dealt with like in person one, because I have conversations with my friends about vaccines all the time. I've never met someone. I don't think I've ever met anyone from either high school or college who aligns with all my views on vaccines. And so I get to have these conversations with people who disagree with me. And I think you just have to how I've come at it is like, I could be 100% wrong, but also you could be 100% wrong. And it's like, we want to learn from each other. And I think that's how we have respectful conversations with people. And I've witnessed, like, social media is another whole world, but when you have respectful conversations in person, I think there's a lot of ground that can be covered, and that you can actually change people's perspectives. And I've actually seen that with my own, like with my friends. Like, I've been able to my friends' perspectives have shifted, some of my friends, so I think that's really cool to see. And again, it's like I've witnessed how it has affected my life and the benefits of not vaccinating. And I want that for other people. And that's sort of where what I would say about that. But I don't know, Mom, if you have any comments on it.
I mean, I wouldn't read the comments because I know they could be bad. And I believe every mother that gives birth to a child loves their children so much that they want to do the best for their child. And that's what they think when they are vaccinating their children. It's a very emotional conversation for me. So I will try not to keep those tears back. But if you can only educate yourself and to research, and then make your decision before you just go take that baby to all those vaccines and suffer with the temperatures and different things that you suffer through, so just research, but I know we all come from the love of our heart and we're all doing the best we can for our children. So I just went to a different level of researching with someone very important to me that taught me so much. And I was so blessed to have him in my life to teach me. And then I researched and then made my decision. Didn't really care what people thought. I lost friends. People did not want once they found out, couple people that my children weren't vaccinated, they didn't want my children to play with them anymore. And that was okay. But they came back around and now those children are best friends. My son just walked in someone's wedding that they didn't play it as a child.
Do you want to touch on do you want to touch on how like the fear that doctors instilled with you growing up, or like just anyone?
Yeah, I think I was blessed with my pediatrician, but I do know that they are going to they did say you're taking a risk of them getting this, this, and this. And I said, well, I'll take my risk, and I have a religious exemption, just do a checkup. And that's all. The only thing my children never had was hematocrit, which is a little blood test in the finger, prick in the finger for iron. And that was it. Otherwise, they checked your ears, nose, and throat, and we left, and that was it. Weigh them, check their measurements, and that was it. And my doctor eventually, after a few years, never was all for me. We hugged every time we left the office, and he was very behind me. He wasn't against me. I think if you stay strong in your belief and you show that you have your research, I think the doctors are not going to give you a hard time. But you got to stay strong and you got to do your research. You can't just listen to us. Your research, there's so many books out there that you can read, and Jono can post some of them.
Yeah, I think I'll just touch really quick on that last point. Is like you do need to really stay strong with your beliefs, and people are going to share other things with you that maybe like will put fear in you, and things like that. But and I've even witnessed that time here and there. But you just need to stay strong with your beliefs, and just run with it. I mean, like we said, it's worked for four of my mom's children. So yeah,
100%.
Okay, so Johnathan, I'm going to ask you some questions. So do you have any of the conditions the vaccinated have? Do you have learning difficulties?
No.
Paralysis of any kind?
No.
Do you have autism?
No.
Do you have seizures?
No.
Okay, eczema, allergies. I don't know. Do you have anything wrong with you?
No, I mean, growing up, we don't. The only time I've ever went to a doctor was for the yearly checkup, that my school required. And growing up, we would get sore throats and fevers here and there. But even then, like, my mom would just, put different modalities and like holistic modalities in, we'd, like she said, like essential oils on the feet, warm water, rest, and all these things. And, 24, 48 hours, that would be gone. But outside of that, there was, we never had ear infection, never strep throat, never any like, even those things. Yeah, never taken a Tylenol.
Any medicine in our homes.
Yeah, I've never taken medications. And so yeah, I've never had any condition that has been really bad, and I'm so grateful for it, and blessed for it. Yeah, or my siblings as well. So
okay,
yeah.
Johnathan, listen up. This is advice I'm going to give to you, okay? Because I'm old and I've been through this in this game for a long time. Choose very carefully your future wife.
Yes, I know.
You are struggling with
Very carefully.
Help us find one.
I know love is blind and all that kind of stuff, but I've seen on my travels interviewing people, the worst cases are when they think they're on the same page and they have kids and they end up getting
100%.
and it's awful. So please, it's my biggest advice to you. Also, I want to ask you just a quick question. No, we're out of time, but never mind. What do you both see? And this is a hard question, maybe an emotional question, but when you're in the supermarket, when you're in the park, when you're wherever you are, and you see so much injury and you hear of so much death following vaccine, there's so much death, the babies that have died, and the parents are screamed out, put in jail. Parents who just thought they were, like you said, doing the right thing, their children are disabled for life. And you heard the section before, we're concerned that they're going to come for our kids and put them down, and whatever MAiD's doing. But yet you got there and you have this beautiful young man, your son, because you knew and we didn't know.
Yeah.
So what do you think when you see the injury?
It's heartbreaking, completely heartbreaking. And I can't say anything. And I would never say to a mom, there was a risk there, I would never, because they're doing the best they can out of the love from their child. So yeah, it's very heartbreaking. I have a gentleman right now working for me who has the baby and in my company, and it hasn't vaccinated the baby yet. I think the baby's 4 or 5 months old, and I'm just gave him a lot of information, and I feel so blessed. And I always said, whichever way you go, I support you 100%. I know you do it out of love of this baby. And so far he hasn't, and he feels the baby's striving, doing so amazing. So those stories do lift me up, but there's stories in my own family that, it is what it is, everyone has to do what they believe in. So it's very heartbreaking for us. And I'm sure for Jonathan, even his friends in college, when you see them taking medications or.
Yeah. I mean, I'll touch at our school, and I'm sure it happens at other schools. I was actually super surprised when it first happened, but we had like a flu clinic during flu season where, there was a clinic that was actually giving out flu vaccines. And for me, I was just in shock that was even on like a college campus. And they were just giving them out. And yeah, it's very sad. I hate to see it. And that's why I talk to my friends about it. Never want to push my beliefs on them, but just at least let them hear a different like view. Because even that, it's like some people, I think the vast majority of people don't even know that there's like another view out there, or like have never maybe even interacted with someone that has a different belief around this with them. And even vaccines aside, just like the junk food that kids are eating, like that probably hurts me the most just because I see it all the time, and that's really hard just because I know how just, how bad, how they'll feel afterwards and how bad it is for their body and how much better they would be if they were, living a healthier diet, having a healthier diet and lifestyle. So yeah, it's very hard, but I think, the best thing is like, sharing your personal experience with them. And that's what I've been doing. And I think it goes a long way for sure.
And Jonathan, what do you want to be? What's your plan when you finish school?
Yeah, so I was actually planning to go to med school up until like 3 months ago, and that is when I found out that there's a logistical barrier of the vaccines. So I had a religious exemption, like my mom said, for my entire life of going from pre-K to 12th grade, and now in college. Give them religious exemption, and then everything's all good. I can go to the school. And so I thought that would be the same thing with med school. And the reason I wanted to go to med school, I mean, there's various reasons, but one of the big things is like I wanted to sort of be that like different voice in the establishment and like hopefully make some change, But then 4 months ago, I figured out that that's not the case, that I would actually have to be vaccinated to at least graduate. Apparently I could probably get accepted into a med school, but I would have no guarantee and probably would not be able to do rotations. So the last 2 years of med school. So that's now not going to be going down that path. But I am, I'm a biology major, neuroscience minor at Davidson College. And I want to definitely continue science communication. And I have played around with the ideas of either going toward a PhD and maybe becoming a professor. I love the classroom environment. I love having the ability to have an influence on students and future, doctors and everything. But also, my mom and I have recently been talking about it, becoming a chiropractor. So I don't know what's in store for me now. Although what's great is that, with med school is you have to like make that decision, like, all right, I'm going to med school very early on. But with these career trajectories, I have some time to think about it. But those are two of the paths that I'm thinking about going down.
Yeah, don't rule out our science department at Children's Health Defence.
Amazing. Yeah.
There you go.
All right, so let's find out how we can follow you. Everybody go over to, I'm only on Instagram. I'm banned from Facebook still after many years. But that's where I found you. So here we go. So it's Johnathan Jarecki, do you say? Jarecki, everybody.
Yep, Jarecki. Yeah, Johnathan Jarecki on Instagram. I'm on X. I have a Substack called The Signal. Yep, there it is. Where I'm, write a little bit more in depth about just a ton of different science topics that I'm interested in, and also have a podcast myself. It's called The Signal with Johnathan Jarecki. That's on YouTube and all podcast streaming platforms. My mom does not have a social media yet, but we got a lot of requests for it. But we'll see. I'm trying to convince her to.
Okay, well, both of you are amazing, and thank you so much for lifting us up and being on. We hope to get you back on again and keep us updated.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for giving him such good advice.
Thank you so much.
Love
All right. Okay, everybody, now we're going to go to New Zealand cases as a tribute to New Zealand Casey. There you go, web series giving voice to the New Zealand COVID jab casualties. So that's that. And I'll see you tomorrow morning. I'm covering for Michael Caine tomorrow morning.
Just took one. and that was after an hour, started slowly having symptoms. So I had numb tongue, my body was feeling very off. I collapsed. I remember crawling to the car. I was like, pain, 10 out of 10, please help. Like, sorry. They treated me like I was insane. We have now received the reviewer's decision and they have approved cover for the following injuries: injection puncture wound incorrectly administered to the vascular system, spike protein-induced neuroinflammation, dysautonomia due to vasopressor, induced neurological autoimmunity manifesting as encephalitis with seizures, peripheral neuropathy, and Guillain-Barré syndrome, encephalitis, and epilepsy.
What's the date on that letter?
The 11th of August 2025.
What was the date you were injured?
The 9th of 2021. I'm still dealing with daily hardships. I still can't walk properly. I still got struggles with my leg, especially the right one. It seizes up. If I'm walking too long, or if I'm moving too long, especially in physio, which I've just started recently, I've realized how much my body still struggles to do just simple movement. And yeah, I've been struggling with passing out, the odd seizures here and there, and brain fog, which I can feel today, still struggling with that. So I need to take my moments and, really let myself think before I talk. It's taught me a lot of patience within myself, my condition. I still can't swallow properly. I have to be very wary of how I eat even. My breathing can go very strange as well. Just simple things like showering or walking to get the letter from the letterbox, that kind of stuff can be an issue. I've got to be very aware of just things people don't have to think about. And it's very interesting having to think about the little things. Makes you appreciate it. Just daily trying to find a way to exist and live. My health was the best it's ever been. I was working Monday to Friday, doing the job of my dreams. I can't express how happy I was during that time. It was just the best job. It was like a hobby shop kind of warehouse where you're picking and packing for things. So it's like you're shopping, but you're heavy lifting, you're walking all day. But so I had all the exercise I could need, and I was exercising at home for strength reasons. So my health was amazing. What more can I ask for? I had amazing friends. I had it all. I love singing. Before, I was singing all the time. I was enjoying life. You'd find me humming at work. I just remember being very content with everything, with my life, with my relationships. I look at that, and for so long, I envied the past me. It's an odd thing to feel, envy who you used to be. But now I'm appreciative, in a sense, of what I've been through knowing who I used to be and who I've become. I've become a lot wiser, a lot more intuitive. Legally, I understand that a lot more. It's a very odd thing to think about. But when you face a system as I did, it's necessary, very necessary.
Hey Lord, I'm fighting. I'm sure this world is done with me. Hey Lord,
In my job, the managers were talking about the COVID vaccine coming through, and I was like, oh, okay, interesting. And I've had other vaccines before in my life, so I was not too worried about it. I didn't hear anything about it at that time. So my head is like, oh, I just have to take a vaccine to keep the job. Sweet, let's do that. Okay. I was not too worried. I knew other around me that taken it, I had no idea. So I just took it, not hearing that that was going to be implemented for work. I was like, okay, easy, done. I'll just do it so it's there and they know that I've done it. It took one vaccine for this to happen to me. As I know now, it was intravenously done, so it didn't go into the muscle, went directly into the vein. That is in my review. And that's why I had such a reaction. It's not meant to go through your bloodstream like that directly. And so that went all through my body. And my body's like, intruder, obviously. And it started attacking itself without realizing, and caused all these issues now because of that. And that was after an hour, started slowly having symptoms. So I had numb tongue, my body was feeling very off, I had like, little spasms, and then over a few days it just got worse and worse. I went to work thinking, I'm just having a allergic reaction, it's going to go away, I'm not too worried about it. So I go back to work on the Monday, started getting worse. I was like, it's going to be okay. The next day after that in the morning, I come in, I'm slowly getting worse again. I collapsed at work, and my manager sent me home after that because I couldn't stand. I remember crawling to the car at one point. And then after that, it just got worse again until I had to go to the hospital. And the first one I went to was emergency care. And they straight away said vaccine on that. And then for some reason, going directly to the proper hospital, they didn't like that. They wrote that. And a bit at odds with a vaccine injured from the COVID vaccine. And that's where my battle began after that. Yeah, I went to North Shore and Auckland, so both of them treated me very similar. They treated me like I was insane. I was having spasms, full spasms, vocal spasms, and they didn't want to test me. They didn't want to do anything. They as soon as they read it was vaccine, like I was in full pain, 10 out of 10 pain. I was telling them that I couldn't comprehend. I was in and out of just awareness. And I remember at one point though, I was like, pain, 10 out of 10, please help. Like sorry. It's one of the hardest things to talk about. I remember one time going to the hospital, they sent me when I was having really bad episodes of spasms. I couldn't move, I couldn't walk, I was in so much pain, passing out. They sent me to the unit where all the people were dying. I don't know why. I remember hearing people dying around me. That was very hard. I remember at one point I was calling for them, I was pushing the button and they wouldn't come because I had to go to the toilet. So I had to go, I was going to pee myself, so I pulled myself onto the floor. I crawled to the toilet. Yeah, I remember that. It was and I understood in the end, it was a very hard time around then, COVID, and everyone was afraid, everyone was freaking out, everyone was coming in for that reason. What I know is from my experience, what hurts me the most is hearing others go through the same thing, made to feel you're insane. I remember at one point a psychologist came in because they thought, oh, she's crazy. So they bring in the psychologist. And the first thing he says to me is like, oh yes, TikTok hysteria, this is a thing. I was too busy working to be on TikTok like that. And I had no idea what he was talking about. I was like, TikTok hysteria, what are you talking about? He's like, oh, this is a phenomenon that's happening at the moment. And I just remember just shaking my head like, no, I've been working hard. I don't really go on this thing. I'm living my life working. The only thing different is I took a new vaccine and now I'm like this. What's going on? But you could tell they didn't want to admit that this vaccine did something. It was a very long time before I finally had a GP that was finally listening. I've gone through a few at that point. Past GPs just didn't want to know, weren't listening to me, were doing phone calls. I wasn't able to see them because of the COVID restrictions, so it was very hard to talk to them over the phone, and I was brain fogged trying to understand what they're saying, and I couldn't. But as soon as I walked in, I remember, I can't name names, but this doctor particularly, he saved my life in a lot of ways, and I'll always be grateful for him. Sorry. Yeah, and I remember I was shaking, I was not able to, I was just, you know, I walked in and he looked at me and he straight away made sure I was okay, and he knew straight away. And he made sure I knew that he knew. He reassured, and bless him. But he did, he helped me a lot. He was able to get me the help I needed and go, yes, this is happening to you. I remember the first time hearing that, going from, this is in your head, you're crazy, you're insane, to suddenly someone going, no, this is happening to you. I took out a breath. I just couldn't believe it. I remember just being like, whoa, okay. This is happening to me. And you don't realize the struggle of gaslighting. And that happened. That happened a lot in hospitals and a lot of specialists. I won't name names, but it did happen quite a bit. I remember the hospital tried to use a schizophrenic medication on me in the hospital that made me worse. One of the older GPs tried to spray one of those calming, like trying to calm you spray to stop you shaking or something. And I got worse after that as well. I had to go directly back.
It's a scam.
Why doesn't she approach ACC?
Especially with the Give a Little, someone who saw what I went through, she put it up for us. I didn't really want it. I wasn't too worried. I was just going to push through. But she was a beautiful, beautiful person for doing that for me anyways, and I really appreciate her for that. It was brought down because obviously people had their ideas about me, and you know, these are people that never saw me in person. They never talked to me, in fact. It was around the time, it was very hard to deal with, especially going through the most hardest point in my condition. You know, they smeared my character, they smeared my name, they smeared who I was without meeting me. They just saw a Give a Little page and just assumed. Oh man, it got to me, like anyone else, obviously. And you have moments like, oh, how can people say such things to you, and not knowing you, not seeing what you go through day to day. And that's the interesting thing about people. They're ready to make a comment, and hey, we all do it, but we're so rushed to make comments before looking into things. This is something I learned now. Be critical in your thoughts. Be prepared to look into things more. Don't just look at something and go, that's what it is, because you never know the depths. You never know the truth until you really look into it, until you get to meet these people, until you get to see behind what you're seeing on the camera. You know, an image, a video only tells you one point in their story, not the whole thing. So don't make judgment and comments based on one point in their life. How can you? If you're going to make comments, come see my life. Come for like a day, see what I deal with. I ended up, after it was published, I actually talked to the person that wrote it over Zoom, and yeah, they didn't say anything after that. Ran away in a way. And I think it comes with pride, a lot of pride, and I don't think they want to be seen as wrong. But what's worse, being seen to be wrong, or others being hurt, others dealing with harmful, life-struggling diseases. what I've thought on this is, with these people over time, I did come to a point where I forgave them, where I had to let go. Their cluelessness, truly. They had no idea. I hope the best for them. I hope they can learn. I hope they have lessons to learn to be better for other people and not to do such a thing for others. And it couldn't touch me in the end. I had a lot of good friends telling me this as well, and saying, yeah, they have no idea. Like, these people, they're cruel, but we're dealing with so much. What are they compared to what you have to go through day to day? And I'm like, you're right. You're so right. And
can you hold them up so we can see how much paper is there? A wad of...
A lot, yes. The review itself was quite long. Your injury is covered by ACC. Oof. Thank you for your patience while we waited for the outcome of your review hearing. I find that Miss Hodgkinson underwent treatment in the form of a needle puncture wound, but there was an inadvertent injection of the vaccine into the vascular system instead of intramuscularly. These puncture wounds into the incorrect structures are covered. She then suffered an adverse neurological event following immediately after a vaccination, and the incorrect administration of the procedure, as well as her unexpected adverse reaction to the vaccine, constitutes treatment injury eligible for cover. That's a weight. That's a whole weight off my back that I've been holding for years. I didn't want to read it at first because I was so used to getting the decline letter, so I was like, I can't. But eventually I did, and I was like, oh wow. And just unbelief. I couldn't comprehend for a second there, and then I'm just like...
That's a long fight.
Long time. Yeah, around 4 years, give or take, of fighting so hard, pushing just for help. I do know through what I've gone through to understand my rights and to understand where I'm able to push for myself is very important. And it makes all these things where all the media and the immunologists that said things about me and how I was a scam made me go, I hope they see this. I hope they do and realize, don't judge before you know. My journey, my battle was years, and I know so many people go for so much longer, and the reason is learning how to understand the system. I was getting denied through a very shrewd point of view. It was I feel, a strange ideology towards the vaccine injured that suffocated them to the point of not being able to see through that. Doctors from ACC, they had not seen me in person making these decisions. And I think that's why I was so fired up, was because it was someone making a judgment without seeing the full story. Like for a lot of things with injustices, I had that fire in my heart that pumped so much and burned so brightly that I had to keep going. I had to keep fighting, not just for myself even, but I understood for myself as well. Those days, I would even go, why God? Why am I doing this? Why? I'm sick. I can't deal with this. I'm so tired. And it's very interesting. Doctors would tell me, this is all caused by stress. You did this to yourself and all that, which is funny because I was not stressed before. But the stress came after the injury from ACC. ACC very much so caused a lot of stress. The processes of being denied so much makes you feel certain ways. You feel small, you feel, I don't know. you wonder all these things they say about how the system is there to help you, and you wonder, are they? You question reality itself, and I'm sure a lot of people have gone through this. You question your own self even. You're like, am I this? Am I what they're saying? And that's where the gaslighting comes in, and they're telling you this and they're denying you there. All I could say to people is keep fighting. Keep pushing for yourself even when you think you're down and down and down again. You just keep getting up. I know that's hard. I had to do it when I was passing out. But keep getting up when you can. Take yourself rest. Stand back up and fight. Before I was injured, I did trust the government. I did trust the medical side of things. I was taught to trust. So to have that warped in a way where you realize these people aren't just people that know more than you, they're people. They're not above you. They're people that are dealing with things and they don't understand things as well. Yes, they've got these medical certificates and it's beautiful, and I honestly amazing that they can do things like that. But in the end of the day, they're still people. That was something I really noticed over my whole experience, is like, you can't raise them above you, and they shouldn't raise themselves above you either. No matter how many times they can beat you down, how many times your own body beats you down, you got to keep rising up and carrying on in this journey. Life is a paradox. So I grew up Catholic. I'm not religious so much as I believe in the word of Jesus. I walk in his path more. It's like you're looking up to someone that has a beautiful message and you follow that through your values and morals. That was my message as well. Something that aligned me with Jesus was love and light. And the reason for that was, within love, we can understand. Through light, it shines the truth. As much as you think they do, they don't understand the ones that harm you. That's a big lesson I learned from Jesus. It's like, forgive them, Lord. They do not understand what they do. They don't. Hey, I might not go to church, but my praise is in the lesson of life even. Medications that did help, and the biggest one that helped with the neurological and with other things as well was gabapentin. So you learn a few tricks along the way with dealing with symptoms. You learn how to note on your heart, especially with my conditions. Yeah, mine's a bit resonant at the moment, but it's quite common when I'm doing things. The most struggle that we have is to deal with, the anger and the hate. And trust me, I feel it. I do. I have it. And working through that is a daily thing, even with my disability. And what I say to myself is, live life. Keep working on yourself. The hate is going to consume you. And then what are you doing? You're just hating. You're just consumed by that hate. So I had to work through that as well, because it didn't give me anything. It just made me more tired, made me feel not good about myself. So what I did is just woke up one morning and I said, even when I have moments of anger, let me work through that. And I talked to Jesus and I said, Jesus, give me strength. That's all I ask. Give me strength to carry on. The strength to love, the strength to work through the hate, to work through the hardships, to just live. So I'd tell anyone that you don't need to follow Jesus to follow that. It's not over yet. I'm only nearly 28. Started this whole journey when I was 23 with the injury. It's not over yet. You know, still got a lot of life to live and a lot of lessons to learn. I'm always hopeful. I'm young. I'm always going to stay hopeful. You know, they do state with dysautonomia, it can be a long, the rest of your life thing you can deal with. But there's always hope. And I've always, in the back of my head, like, it's funny, the whole time since I've been injured, in my head, I'm just like, you're going to be okay. You're going to get better. You're going to be dancing and running, and you're going to do all the things you were doing before. And even today, I'm still thinking that, even with the knowing from doctors, you know, they said this is something that you could be living for life with. And I'm like, okay, then I'll learn to work around that, if that's the case. But I'm still going to work through it. I'm going to do physio. I'm going to try and push myself to do as much as I can. Even if I'm burnt out and passing out, I'm going to live my life, no matter what, no matter the pain. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep fighting. But I understand my will is stronger than whatever issues I have to face. Even when I feel a little bit lightheaded now, I'm still push through, do what you have to do, and then I'll relax. But the biggest push was to not be in the wheelchair. I was so determined for that. I still have it just in case, because I've had moments where it's gone really down with my health. I learned my limitations now, and understanding to accept those limitations as well. That was something I had to work through. I know others have as well, so it's something that's very daunting to come to terms with. Like, oh, I can't actually push myself here as much as I wish I could. And that's okay. Don't feel small for that, I would say to others as well. Feel that's okay, that's just how it is for me, but I can do as much as I can.
Right, we're live. Okay, tell us your name.
Brian.
Okay, and this is a story about your son. Now, people, I need you to listen very carefully to this story, because this is actually a warning to all parents with vaccine-injured children like Billy and your son Carl. You need to listen carefully. Right, let's start off to remind the people, because we did do your story on the Vax Bus, remind the people what happened to Carl as a baby, toddler.
Kyle at 12 months had his MMR, chickenpox, and polio shot, and he changed immediately after that. So he was developing normal up until that time. At that time, then he stopped developing whatsoever. He would sit and he would stare off and just be silent, and then he started having seizures. He started having 100 petit mal seizures a day, and every couple of days he would have a grand mal seizure where he would actually fall down and convulse.
And he got a diagnosis eventually of?
He got a diagnosis eventually of epilepsy, but later on what came was a diagnosis of mitochondrial disorder, and then as a result of the vaccines later on he suffered from PANDAS.
Yeah, and describe what kind of a, what kind of a child he, what was he like?
He was the sweetest child ever. His mom and I miss him so much. He was so sweet. He was developing normal, and then after the vaccines he was such a joy. He was easy to take care of because he just sat there, and he was very loving. He was very giving, but he started to change over as he got older. He started attacking me and his mother. I've got scars on my hands where he would attack us. I've got my 2 front teeth been kicked out because when he was having a seizure and I went to administer aid to him, he kicked up and I lost my 2 front teeth. So his health situation got worse and worse, and he deteriorated basically from the vaccine. His mother and I were always worried about what would happen to us when he passed, or when we passed, because we didn't know, we were scared actually of what kind of care he would receive after we were gone, and that decision was ultimately taken out of our hands.
All right, so like many of our children that have been vaccine injured, our boys especially, I suppose, through puberty they do get aggressive and stuff, but he had a beautiful smile. He was very, very loving.
He was.
And tell us what happened then.
He became very violent. We were administering, we had to administer a drug called, it was midazolam through the nose, because he was just so violent, and he would try to hurt himself and he would try to hurt us without realizing it. He would actually beat with his fist, his hands, and he would get bloody noses, and I would have to put my palms up in front of his face so he wouldn't injure himself. But he became so he tried to injure himself and he tried to injure others. We also think too, those seizure meds they put him on, he was on Lexapro and Lamictal and all those seizure meds, none of those, they kept his seizures at bay, but the side effects were more than we could deal with. He became so violent. The vaccines gave him epilepsy, and we had to give him the medications to treat the epilepsy, and it was just a vicious circle, because what we treated him with made it even worse.
Yeah, we're hearing a lot of that. So more medication, big pharma medication.
Exactly.
And you're treating the side effects of that over and over again. And then, so did he get sick then during COVID?
He got sick during COVID. In November of 2019, we put him on the IVIG therapy, and we were bringing him to the hospital once a month for that. So, and then in May 6th, I'll never forget the date, May 6th of 2020, I basically brought him to the emergency room, because what happened was a couple of weeks prior to that, he lost all functions. He couldn't walk. He was crawling around. He was dragging himself. So we didn't know what was going on. His pediatrician, his neurologist, they couldn't explain it to us. And what I brought him to the emergency room is he crawled up to the top of the steps, and then he fell all the way down the steps. So I brought him to the emergency room on May 6th. Now at that time, because of COVID, only I was allowed in the hospital emergency room. At first, they couldn't figure out what happened to him, so they kept him overnight. And then during that time,
Were you with him?
I was with him. Yeah, my wife was not allowed to come to the hospital. What we didn't know. In the emergency room, only one parent was allowed because of COVID. What we later learned, Thursday, May 7th, that night, that my wife could come see him, because they said two parents could be in the room once he was admitted to the hospital. I wasn't told that until Thursday night. And on May 8th, he crashed. And why we think he crashed is because there wasn't enough nurses in the hospital because of COVID, and they put 20 pounds of water on him through an IV fluid, and we think that excess water is what caused his heart, his kidneys, his liver, all of it down. So on May 8th, I was awakened. He was on the floor. Nobody was watching him. He was on the floor, and he was convulsing, and I called for the nurse, and they came in and he started crashing. People from ICU came down right away, and they started wheeling him. They said they had to give him immediate care, otherwise he was going to pass. I had to call my wife because she wasn't there yet, because on that evening I told her, go ahead and stay home, come back, the next day when you're fresh, and then I'll go home. We were going to take shifts. So on May 8th, we were told he was going to pass. We had the priest there, we had everything there, and then an hour later the doctor came back and said, he's a fighter, now he's going to live. But he was in ICU for an additional 2 weeks after that.
And what was he on ICU? What were they feeding him? What was the drugs?
He was on a respirator. I know that. So I'm sorry, I can't. My wife would be able to tell what drugs he was on. He was on a respirator. He was being administered. He had a whole column of drugs they were administering to him while he was there on that hospital.
Do you have any idea what those drugs were?
We were just so stressed and traumatized at the time. I wish I knew. And it's something too you try to put out of your mind, and I apologize.
Did they say he had COVID?
They took a COVID test while he was there, and they tested us, but all those results came back as negative. So I don't know. I don't think he did.
But they were treating him for...
They treated him as his whole body had shut down, and they couldn't explain why. We believe, it was all related to the vaccine injury, all those different seizure meds. We think they all deteriorated his immune system throughout the years, and it just basically his body couldn't take it anymore. So he was in ICU for 2 weeks. He wasn't discharged from the hospital until June 13th. Prior to that discharge, they put him into a therapy home for children to be rehabilitated, but there was no way he could be rehabilitated because he couldn't walk, he couldn't stand, he couldn't keep food down. It was just awful. So we had to take him home. I demanded, they wanted to keep us there. I said, no, we're taking him out of this hospital. I don't care. And they said, well, we'll bring you up before the board. I said, I don't care. Bring it on. I'm ready. So because there was no way because I wanted his quality of life, I wanted him to pass at home where it would be comfortable. I didn't want him in that damn hospital, that damn therapy room, in a bed. We couldn't get food because it was not associated with the hospital, so they had to bring him his meals. By the time he was ready to eat, the food was cold, so I said no, and he couldn't eat anyway. So we brought him home on June 13th, the day before Father's Day, and he passed 3 months later, exactly on September 13th at 2 a.m. I held him in my arms as he passed. He wasn't eating. He looked like a concentration camp survivor because he was just skin and bones at that point. It was just a horrible time. My poor wife had to suffer through that for 3 months. He still couldn't walk, and the day before he died, he crawled to her. He wanted to, to be with her. And like I said, at 2 a.m., he was in so much pain. He was suffering so much. I was giving him fentanyl by a syringe every couple of hours because his pain was just so bad. And he was still trying to attack us, but he was just so weak. But I mean, at 2 a.m., I was sleeping on the couch, because he wanted to be in the den, which was fine. We put foam mattresses down. We kept him there, and that's where he wanted to be. He was peaceful. At 2 a.m., he reached up like that, and I went to him, and I held him in my arms, and that was the last time I held him. Last time he was alive, and his spirit left him. My wife wanted to be with him, to stay with him, but she couldn't. He was just too anxious. He was just too restless. She couldn't get any sleep. So I told her to go upstairs. I slept on the couch. I kind of kept half awake. I kept my eyes on him, and like I said, something told me it was he was ready to go, because like I said, he reached out to me like that, and I went over to him. I held him in my arms. I administered. My wife says we killed him, but I just can't. It was not a life that I wanted him to live. When you bring, I wanted so much more for my son, and there's a lot of guilt with us. There's a lot of guilt because, like I said, we always wanted him to pass before us, but we were never expecting that. So because we were so scared of what kind of care, what the state would have done with him once, we had passed. But so there's a lot of guilt on our end. There's a lot of guilt that we suffer.
Well, you definitely didn't kill him. Why would you think that? You didn't
because
kill
my
him.
wife believed because he was in so much pain, and we were administering pain medicine to him. And
but that was prescribed by a doctor, right?
That was prescribed by palliative care, which is basically hospice, end of life care, because they knew. And we get angry because we were all at that hospital on May 8th. We had the priest there. We were ready to let him go, and then they say, "Oh no, he came back." And then they try to keep him alive, and for what? Just so they could get more, keep him until that time. And like I said, it was a fight for me to get him out of the hospital. I said, "I'm taking him out of this hospital. Half the police. I don't care. He's not dying here in this room. I'm not going to have that. I'm not going to have that for my son."
All right. Well. Mrs. Carl.
And I'm sorry, I know I'm disjointed.
It's okay. He's beautiful. Beautiful.
And that's him in the hospital. And my wife didn't want him to be remembered, but he had a tube, he had everything else. I wanted to bring you so you could see how they put him in the hospital, and she didn't want him to be remembered like that. That's how she wanted him to be remembered.
So tragic. I'm really sorry. It's accumulation, isn't it, of the vaccines that
the vaccines and then the medicines we had to treat him with to offset what the vaccines did to him. So it was just a vicious circle, and he suffered his whole life from vaccines. Starting at 12 months, he was never the same. Like I said, until he hit puberty, which I'm sorry, that's what happened. So at puberty, he became more violent from the vaccines. He developed mitochondrial disorder. He developed pandas. He was attacking us. I was just done. But we would not put him in a home, My family members, her family members, they commend us for not putting him in a home, but there was no way I would never put him in an institution, and we brought him to a doctor once, to the hospital, and that was their answer. Oh, just put him in an institution. No, the vaccines did this to him. I'm not putting my son in an institution and let him be ignored. And I've seen what those institutions can do to people.
Mm-hmm. And your wife couldn't be here today.
Right, because it's 2 days from his death. It's just too raw for her.
Mm. Yes. Will you give her our love?
I will. And she remembers you, and she always watches your show, and she thinks you're doing great work.
Well, it's teamwork, but just know we're really sorry. And I think, first of all, many of our parents share the same fear. What's going to happen when we're no longer around? Secondly, this over-medication of our kids is not okay. And so everything that's happened to Carl was not okay. None of it.
And there wasn't enough nurses in the hospital because of COVID, and nobody monitored his intake of his IV for getting fluids. And the doctor slipped up and told us later, well, he had 20 pounds of extra water on him. So it was just such a nightmare to be in that hospital. So that's why, that didn't help. But whatever was going on with him neurologically, that 20 pounds of water on his system definitely, we think, pushed him over the edge and what caused him to crash. I'm not a medical doctor, but that's not, I know that's not good.
Is there anything else you want to say about this?
No, I just want to warn parents, this is a lifetime problem. It's just something that starts a vaccine, and then you have to give these children medications to deal with the offsets from all these symptoms that the vaccines cause. And it's just, like my wife says, whether our child have measles, something like the chickenpox. I had chickenpox as a child. I developed. Like she said now, they give a child hepatitis at 2 days old. Why? How was a 2-month-old going to be exposed to hepatitis when? So it's just asinine now. I believe there's 84 mandated vaccines for our children now. That's just why. When we were growing up as kids, 16 maybe, that was it. So
yeah, thank you so much for telling us. It's very hard for you to tell us the story.
And I hope I didn't rant and rave. I apologize.
You were great.
Okay.
You were great. Thank you. We really appreciate it.
Okay.
This and all CHD TV programming is made possible by generous support from viewers like you. Please consider making a contribution today to keep our programming going strong. Thank you.